All right, well, let's see. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's right at 11. So thanks everyone for joining today. I'm Tamara Van Meter. If I'm a new face for you, or if you're not familiar with SMBW, I am one of the principals here. We are a local architecture planning and design team, and I lead our interior design group, which includes workplace strategies. So we started this series really in July of this year. After the pandemic hit, we started to host a series of these conversations, and they were at the time were really centered around for businesses, how to rebuild your reopening plan. And those were very, very successful. A lot of great conversations, we kept hearing from people that, you know, it's great to read stats on the news. It's great to hear the national experts, but what I really want to know is, what are our peer businesses doing? What are others doing in Richmond? So we decided to continue the conversation, but just dial it in a little tighter to certain markets. So we're going to be hosting 3 webinars. Today we're talking about corporate, and we're also going to be launching one on higher education and mixed use. So the purpose of these is to really dig in a little deeper with some of our local businesses and leaders to hear exactly what you guys are dealing with. We're all in this together, and regardless of your business size or organization, you know, the pandemic has touched us all and has changed the way that we work and live. So it's you know, we believe that the more we share, the more we can learn and move ahead to a better future. So this series, we're going to run for about an hour. There is a Q&A box that you can share questions if you'd like to pose to the panelists, and we'll do our very best to get back to you and weave those into the conversation. At the end of this session, we will share a link to this. It's being recorded, so you can watch it at a later time, as well as info to follow up with each of the panelists. So just a quick little snapshot. You know, we all look at the news. You know, the stats are certainly, they seem to be moving in the wrong direction at the moment. There are 1,000 new cases a day. We've hit 10 million cases nationwide, and about 194,000 of those here in Virginia. So it is certainly, as the weather is changing and the cases are going up, it is causing more and more businesses to continue taking quick inventory of how people are doing, how's business going, what changes do we need to anticipate. The schools are continuing to slowly start to reopen locally, but are keeping an eye on the stats. And so, you know, at any point, we may see that change as well. So what we wanted to do is we've gathered together some panelists that SMBW has the good fortune of working with, all of these businesses, and we tried to gather a diverse range of industries and businesses, and also business scale, because we think it would be interesting to hear perhaps how is life different for a startup versus a Fortune 200 company. So I wanted to introduce our panelists, and then we'll get going. First, we have Julia Bradley with Altria. Julia is the Senior Manager of Strategic Space Planning for Altria. Her team is responsible for about 3,000 employees locally, as well as a plant in Nashville. And their focus is creating planning and workplace environments for a broad variety of work. Julia has been with Altria for about 5 years, but prior to that, working in the market for 22 years as an interior designer for aviation, corporate, and healthcare clients. So she is well-versed in the subject matter. And more interestingly, Altria was in the midst of building a massive renovation and new addition to their corporate headquarter facility on West Broad when the pandemic hit. So she will, I'm sure, share some great war stories and lessons learned with us. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
And then we have Jyot Singh with RTS Labs. Jyot is an entrepreneur and a CEO and investor to many early stage technology startup companies. He is also the founder and CEO of RTS Labs. RTS Labs is a local software and development team, and Jyot is responsible for also mentoring a lot of new talent and emerging talent in the market. Jyot's team has been in their space for about 2 years, the local HQ office, and it's interesting, he shared with us that while the pandemic has been really a setback for some businesses. Others in the technology field have seen the opposite. He's seen a real uptick in activities. So his challenges are perhaps different than others. So welcome, Jyot. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And then we have Kipton Currier with Phlow. Kipton is the Director of Talent and Culture for Phlow Corporation. Phlow is a public benefits corporation with the mission to provide affordable, high quality, and essential medicines to the U.S. through advanced manufacturing processes. Kipton's focus at Phlow is to create a best-in-class workplace in the middle of a pandemic. That is not easy. She is a fourth-generation entrepreneur and enjoys blending her talent for people, healthcare, shared values, and innovation. And if you see any dust or hammer swinging behind Kipton's head in the midst of this, it is simply because Phlow is quite literally in the middle of building their HQ. So they definitely have some inside experience to living through construction. So welcome, Kipton.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, we have SMBW's own Michelle Makita. Michelle is an associate and a senior designer and planner with our team. Her expertise is leading our most complex corporate office renovations and construction projects. During the pandemic, Michelle has really been one of our leading workplace strategists, helping clients map their plans for reopening safely and how to weather the challenges of culture and space planning challenges in the midst of a pandemic. So Michelle has really been in the trenches and can share a lot of firsthand observations of what she sees happening right now in the market. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to, I'd like to give each of you guys just a moment to introduce yourselves personally. You can share a bit more about your role at your companies, and then we'd like to hear how your company is operating right now, meaning are you back in the office, are you working remotely, or are you in a hybrid? So we'll start with Julia.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I work for Altria, and as you know, or maybe don't, we're a large manufacturing company. We own tobacco companies and also wine businesses. So many of you have probably seen our manufacturing center off I-95. So we have a range of industries, a range of businesses, and it kind of crosses every possible interior situation. We've got labs, we've got offices, we've got off-site meeting places, you know, high-end places like this in our conference center, as well as really basic spaces. So my team is in charge of developing the space to keep up with the business, which is ever changing. We're trying to match the right team for the right supporting space for what they're trying to do. So we assign space. We manage all of our furniture assets as well as new purchases. We're also trying to lead culture a little bit and get into the strategy of workplace and help support cultures or drive towards a new culture with the spaces we surround the workforce with. Currently, we are obviously protecting our manufacturing workforce. They have to come in and we kind of need them to do that without interruption. So we're protecting them, and they're our tier 1 workers. Everyone else is considered a tier 2 or tier 3. A tier 2 is someone who needs to come in from time to time. Maybe it's because they don't have internet or they need equipment that we have on site. Or in some cases, it's for the mental health. And then tier 3 folks are really people who are doing their job just fine from home. They really need very little access to anything. And I would say we're about 80–85% working from home, with the rest either tier 1 having to be here or tier 2 who are here occasionally.
Very good. Thank you, Julia. Jyot, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, good morning. RTS Labs, as a role, I'm the founder and CEO of RTS Labs. I think Tamara mentioned it. We're a custom software development, so high tech. We hire high tech workers, all about technology. Our specialty is custom software, agile product development, a lot of data science, so cutting edge technology, and then Salesforce customization and consulting. So that's our core focus. From a lot of local clients, a lot of international clients as well. Working across time zones, we have mastered that art. From a working in space and either remote. From, I believe, March 13th, we have been 100% remote. And for last 2 months, we started slowly coming in the office, mostly on Wednesdays, but I would say, I would call it like a partial hybrid. So maybe 10, 15 people show up in the office. So that's how I think we are planning probably until next year, we're going to be fully kind of partial hybrid remote workspace. But yes, I mean, if I look back, I think it's more remote.
I'm curious, Jyot, you said your day in the office is Wednesdays. Did you choose that by design to encourage people?
Yeah, good question. So we picked a random day. Wednesdays seemed to be a good day, and it just happened. And I think Monday we have a lot going on from a meeting perspective, so we thought Monday was not a good day. Wednesdays when people are kind of getting slow, so we gotta get them out of their isolation zone. So we started doing breakfast meetings outside the office, and that was one of the way to get them close to the office and slowly carry them into coming to work. But yes, and of course getting lunches and all that stuff. But we're seeing that I think people have gotten comfortable working remotely, especially for the work we do. So we're fine with that. But yes, I mean, the option is on the table. Monday, Wednesday, we're in the office, come in and interact with us.
Yeah. And I know, Kipton, you guys have done some similar things in terms of schedule, but Kipton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kipton Currier. I'm the Director of Talent and Culture for Phlow Corp. We are bringing back pharmaceutical essential medicine manufacturing to the United States. And so we've been playing a really important role in securing our nation's supply of active pharmaceutical ingredients and also finished dose medications during the pandemic. So we were incorporated in January as a public benefit corporation, and we are rapidly growing. We are approaching, I think our 23rd employee started yesterday, and we'll have 30 employees by the end of the year. And this is our third space since January. So it's been, we've been moving and shaking during a pandemic. We were incubated at NRV, the venture capital firm in town. Tamara saw us in our temporary dwelling at Biotech 8. And so I would say that technically our first employee started on April 1st, even though we'd all been working on it, and our founder, Dr. Eric Edwards, had really, been working full time on it for a very long time before we started joining him. And so we were going to the office. We've been going to the office this whole time. We were a really, really small team in that April-May timeframe. And we were at Biotech 8, and driving to work in the mornings, it was like, apocalypse. You would get on the highway. There wasn't anyone on the highway. No one in the building. It was, an abandoned ghost town. And we, for the safety of our employees, as we started to grow, and I think we hired, we went from, I think 8 to 13 employees over the course of June. We started going remote on Mondays and Fridays, and we were in the office Tuesdays through Thursdays. Tamara is, really understands where we've been and where we're going, but we moved into our third space at Haxel Point. We're in the former Envera space, and we're currently making it Phlow. We moved in at the end of August, and so we are in the midst of a construction project, going through rapid growth, and it's been a lot of fun being the Director of Talent and Culture. And I would say every single person that we've hired is very mission focused and excited to be here and passionate. And, it's kind of, it makes the pandemic secondary when everyone can show up to work with this mission to really help our nation supply our essential medicines. So it's, and then I have some fun news. We were officially named a great place to work that last week. So we're doing, we're having a lot of fun.
Congrats. Michelle?
Just a little bit of a pulse kind of on SMBW, because our work is so focused on our clients' work. We are incredibly flexible to meet all those needs. So example, we do have some shift work. So some people are here kind of half days throughout the week, but then, we're going to job sites. So I'm a little bit of a road warrior crossing Virginia nowadays. But I did get a very cool sticker. I had a job site that had an outbreak. But when I went to visit later, after everything was clear and the shutdown was over, one of the construction crews gave me a sticker that I joined their band of brothers for the COVID-19, even though I wasn't there. But I think we have implemented some strong safety protocols, and we're really trying to keep track of our employees. But we want to make sure that they're out and they're representing us in a safe way so that we can do our job safely. So equipping them with all the proper PPE, and that includes our construction PPE. We wanted to remind everybody, wear your vest, wear your goggles, wear your hats, have it all and be prepared. So that's kind of been our mission so far.
So what we wanted to do is dig into a conversation, and we're going to have this really in three different buckets. The first, we're going to talk a bit about business impact, how the pandemic has changed how you're working, and maybe what you see coming in the future. And then we're going to talk a bit about team and workplace. So first, let's start with business, and I'll kick this off with Julia. Julia, how would you say the pandemic has affected a typical day in the life? How has it changed your business? And certainly, Jyot and Kipton, please feel free to chime in and share your point of view as well.
I think from a very high level, sales haven't been drastically affected. The wine business took a bit of a hit because the tasting rooms were closed and people just weren't going to restaurants. And so that has taken a pretty hard hit, which I'm personally trying to do my best to keep St. Michel Wine Estates afloat. But, you know, we did see some interruptions in supply chain, both on the construction site and in the plant and other places. And, you know, something I didn't think about before, but Michelle made me think of this. You know, one thing that was a hardship was that our design team was all out of town. So there were times when we really needed them on site and they just weren't able to fly. So that's something that in hindsight now was, I think, a real hindrance to us, because your design team's eyes on construction progress and all of that stuff is so important. So that was a bit of a problem for us, I think. But from the company standpoint, in general, you know, we're not terribly affected monetarily.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in, Tamara. I think from a sales perspective, one thing that COVID has shared with us, that, you know, for businesses, that technology is a must. So I think from a sales perspective, we were fine. I think very similar to what Julia said. So I think we were seeing more increased demand for our work, especially the work that we do in terms of, you know, data science or custom software or whatnot. But so let me talk about things that happen internally within the business, and I think that is something that you know, people who are watching will connect and kind of emphasize what we did. So you know, without a doubt, 2020 has been a heck of a ride. You know, a big roller coaster. You know, my kids always say, "Hey, let's go to King's Dominion or whatnot." I said, "No, trust me, I'm dealing with it every day." One day you're at the top, second day you're at the bottom, right? It's been a kind of a pretty big roller coaster, right? The other thing that happened, especially for us, and again, you designed our space. We were all about people coming to work and collaborate. My philosophy has always been that you bring really smart talent in one place and let them you know, go free, and good ideas, creative ideas come through that process. Overnight from March 12th to March 13th, and it's just been you know, it kind of pinned in my head, we became a fully 100% remote company, and that adaptability was not easy. Even though people can question, "Oh, you guys were a tech company, not easy." But we've never worked like a tech company. We still use whiteboard. I mean, the whiteboard that you have designed, right? Every conference room, every personal office, they all have big giant whiteboard and sticky notes sticking with that. So for us, it was a big change. So we adapted well, and I think you know, of course, we had challenges, but I feel looking back, there are a lot of things that we learned. I think three things that stood out personally for me when I reflect back of what we did really well and what we're going to carry forward. I think the first thing was culture, and you've been in our offices. Culture has been always at the key for everything. Our conversation, our meeting, how we interact with our client, culture has been at the key. Again, we're not trying to make it much more, these are the values you got to live by the every day. No, it's not. How we respect each other, how we work with each other. I think that is what we call as a culture. And, we did not realize how critical it was, especially when we all shifted to a remote workplace. We knew each other, we mentored each other, we coached each other, and that bond and that glue became a very important factor in our kind of riding this wave. The other thing that happened really well for us was that we became, like, we were always very transparent about what's going on in the business, and we share everything openly. But something that I always, as a leader, I always assumed that people know about things. That became a bigger problem in a remote workspace because we were not, doing a water cooler conversation. We were not passing through and say, hey, how are you feeling? Oh, you look a little bit stressed. And that part became a challenge. And one of the things that I implemented was that I became even more open. So situations where I did not know where we'll be tomorrow, I will say, hey guys, a quick meeting, pull up everyone. We don't know where we're going. And I just wanted to let you know that we don't know. And even that part was so important. I mean, I got so many notes, even from our clients saying, hey guys, I don't know what you're, telling your employees. They're stressed, but they're happy stressed. They feel they're in the know. And with this current workforce, they all want to know everything, right? Because of, internet and many other things, they feel that we are responsible for giving them all the information. And that information could very well be, we don't know where we're going, right? So that was another important aspect that we learned. So kind of like being more deliberate about transparency. And the third,
and I think you're right. We don't have all the answers. No one does right now, but there is a sense of comfort, I think, when you can connect and reunite and even just share those stories and kind of commiserate together. There's something healing about that this probably taught us all. You have to try harder because being together allowed for that spontaneously to happen. Kipton, would you say for Phlow, your perspective's got to be very different because you're a new company launching, so you don't have decades of history to reflect on. But how has the business been impacted?
No, I just really appreciate everything that the panelists said, and it's really helping inform my answer. But it's different, but the same. And so what I heard coming through is, I always think about communication times 10 and how necessary it is to keep communicating and over communicate and really pursuing that clarity, no matter what. If it's in a pandemic, if it's an early stage of a company. And so I think that we're just trying to communicate as much as possible. And then also keeping in mind, commitment equals 0.9 times involvement. I think about that all the time because we're always, as you build an organization, you're looking at the polarities of, structure versus unstructured, individual versus team. And you're constantly kind of, trying to find the right balance. And with a new organization in a pandemic, it's much more complex. I could say it's harder. It's more difficult. And it's finding new ways to do the same thing. And it sounds like we're all adapting. I think that we're really fortunate at Phlow that the majority, probably almost all of our employees are very entrepreneurial. So we are used to finding different ways of doing things, and we're highly adaptable. By definition, we are a high performing team. We're able to come together and accomplish, really huge milestones. We obtained a $354 million contract from BARDA in May, and now we're executing that contract and we're building our commercial business. And we've been able to do that in a pandemic. And what Jyot was talking about in terms of shared values, I think that's kind of the next stage of our work. And we have our shared values of integrity, collaboration, innovation, lifelong learning, and servant leadership in any business, defining the ways of working together and really operationalizing those values. So what does collaboration mean? Because every single person here has a different definition of collaboration. And so as we define what our values look like and how we're working together in the middle of a pandemic, they're going to look different. So last year, collaboration would have meant something different. And it's really taking the time and slowing down to have those important conversations and having the offsites, even if we have to all wear a mask. We're planning an offsite for December at Lewis Ginter, and you know, I think we're all going to have to wear masks the whole time, but it's worth it for us to do that and build that solid foundation of trust. That Jyot's fortunate that they had that bond and that glue before going into this, and we're building that bond and that glue as a team during all of this.
Sure. You know, and I think at our company, we're a curious bunch. We like to kind of challenge ourselves and what's working, what's not. And so I think what a revelation has been, it's not all been bad. You know, there have been some changes that we were forced into, granted, but that have had some positive side effects. Julia even said earlier, business travel, you know, for those of us who we may have a client or a job site that's remote and we haven't been able to reach them personally, we're relying so heavily on virtual. And what that's allowed us to do is now include an entire team from junior designers all the way up to senior who previously wouldn't have been approved to make that business trip. Now they can dial in. And so communication is going faster amongst a team. They're sharing, they're mentoring in a different way. So that's an example of how, you know, a positive change that we think will hang on to long term. But Jyot, I'm curious, have there been adaptations that started at RTS that maybe were a temporary workaround, but that you actually plan to hang on to long term for your workflow or for culture benefit?
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very good point. I think you brought it up. I would call a simple word, call it intentional and deliberate about certain things. So I'll give you a very good example. Before, I'm always like, go, 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 go. Every meeting has to be go, go, go. Let's do it. And I've never been like a person who I would always would pause and say, hey, Tamara, how are you doing, right? I mean, I'm assuming when you're smiling, you're doing well. And that is not necessarily all the case, especially when people are more isolated, people are more stressed out with political scene changing on a daily basis, with COVID, with a lot of things changing. And not everyone is taking it well. And something that I learned, and what I've done is I've incorporated that as intentional, I call this intentional empathy. And we're doing that with our clients also. When we get in a client meeting, our clients are not a logo or just looking for work, right? They are human beings too. They're feeling the same stress that you are. So that intentional empathy has been a key factor for that we have incorporated, something that we took it for granted. Now we're doing it as a much more, hey, Tamara, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Like, what's going on? Tell me the way you started this conversation today. Hey, what's your Thanksgiving plan? Yeah, we used to ask before, but we never, we're thinking about our Thanksgiving plan before, listening to you, right? We have so tuned to this process, and I think it's hard, and we're still a work in progress, but that's something that I'm intentionally, very deliberately working on.
Michelle, in the clients that you're working with right now, a lot of these businesses, especially still in this region, are in this either hybrid mode or they're working remotely. So the fact is their office space is sitting either unoccupied or not at capacity. So what creative solutions are you seeing people have to repurpose some of the surplus space that they may have in their offices?
So I think what we're seeing a lot is that small team rooms, small conference rooms, private offices that might be empty now are really becoming places that people can get up from their workstations, take their masks off, take a call just like this, have a simple background. So they're kind of providing that personal space even more. We saw that a lot with little phone rooms across, but they're really trying to expand what the use of these rooms could be. One funny story for our office is that a neighborhood Wi-Fi went out. So we had an 11th grader here doing her class in one of our little conference rooms. So it's providing that flexibility and adaptability. We've got Wi-Fi, she can be safe in there, clean the surfaces down. We've stocked all the rooms. So it gives a way that you can do different things anywhere. So really kind of transitioning those conference rooms to different things, making outside spaces, places for meetings, open spaces, separating the chairs out a little bit and really giving some breathing room so you feel like you can go meet and people aren't kind of hovering over you at your workstation. So I feel like those at workstation conversations are down by having places to go and meet, having all the technology you need there to get to your desktop from that location.
You know, and it does seem that every company has a slightly different stand on how they plan to handle in-office meetings. Some companies are really suggesting that conference rooms are closed for the time being, even when you come back, that, you know, those meetings are not encouraged. They're encouraged to stay virtual, while others are outfitting rooms differently to respond. So that's definitely been a big area that we've seen a lot of focus, also focus on AV technology. That's something people are really trying to get better quality for those experiences.
Like better lighting.
Mm-hmm.
We all look nice on the camera calls. You can see people well. It's important for that impression. One thing we had that was interesting is in another meeting, multiple people were in the conference room, but everybody had their own video. You know, for a long time, we were setting up conference rooms with the one camera at the front, trying to get the whole table. You can't see people, you can't hear them. So even if you're sitting in a room together, everybody having their laptop or their Surface so that their camera is on them so you can see and connect, is way more successful than trying to get multiple people in a room, somebody in the back corner that's dark with their mask on. You know, that's not really the personal touch that you want to have in a meeting with someone. Right,
right. So if we could pivot and talk for a bit more about your people, your employees. Julia, are you seeing, how is Altria dealing with managing this culture for such an established organization and one that was very deeply rooted in tradition and routine and habit? How are you managing kind of dealing with the cultural growth and the fear of missing out by not being able to come into the office and connect in person with your colleagues?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, several years ago, we started doing a master plan for this project, and we identified several areas that we wanted to just tear down, some just long held things that employees didn't like, but managers were stuck in the way of, I want my team to sit right here so I can see them, I know they're all doing the job. And we thought, oh God, that's got to go. And so we tried to involve, you know, a lot of employees and the managers, and kind of get to the root of it. It boils down to trust. So when we did the master plan for this project, we were very intentional with some success criteria that came out of the process, and we stuck to those throughout the project and checked things against them. So I think when we do come back, we're set up pretty well, and I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the trust thing, I think, is something that has been blasted to the stratosphere, because obviously every employee has proven that they are working really hard at home. They are delivering. They're probably working more efficiently than they ever had, and managers are seeing it. So now, you know, that whole old culture, that old hierarchy has been just erased, which is a wonderful silver lining. But when we, you know, start to bring people back, you know, we're looking at different ways to do it. I don't know that anyone has the right answer. We will definitely be split for a while. So what I've been saying to managers is, you're going to have to be very careful if you do have the meeting before the meeting or the meeting after the meeting or wherever that conversation occurs. If it's something people should really hear and kind of not get, oh, I meant to tell you this last week, you have to pause. You have to come up with a quick way to involve them, because you're right. If we don't do that, people will start to feel that I have to be in the building to be treated the same as everyone else. I might lose some ground from my career. I might be overlooked for things because out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
So I'm worried about the fear of missing out aspect. And I think all I can do is to remind our leaders this is real, this is what your people are feeling, and you have to modify your behavior in order to sort of protect your team. And thankfully, everyone's really open to it and just saying, tell me what I need to do. Unfortunately, I don't think any of us has an entire toolkit to hand out and say, just do this and everything will be fine. But those are the things I'm most cognizant of right now.
And Jyot, you've talked about this before in the past about, you know, where good ideas come from and inclusivity and diversity. So those two words are really prevalent in conversations right now, especially this year and around. It's no different in the workplace. So I'm curious, how has RTS incorporated those values in your organization? And has the pandemic made you rethink any of those, any of your current thinking or policies around diversity and inclusion?
So, I mean, I think it's a great question. So let me share a secret. You know, we all know the organization with the smartest, most creative, and most diverse talents win. It's a simple fact. Everything else is noise. Everything else is noise. It's a simple fact. I think I shared that with you before also. It's, and our jobs, I mean, we have one job. I mean, as a leader of the company, you know, dealing with this, we have to get the best talent in the business and do everything to retain them. I mean, those are the two primary functions we do. So let me elaborate a little bit more. But before I do that, we also know how business has shifted. You know, if you think at many established business have declared bankruptcies, have gone out of business. Some businesses have done really, really well. So if you look and analyze the businesses that have done really, really well, they adapted to the changing environment. And as we all know, we all had, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pages of plan. And when pandemic started, it kind of highlighted how little we controlled things. And we every month we kept being reminded that you can think that you control some certain things and you've done certain things certain way, and this is the right way. Typically that changes the next month. It has been so agile and fast changing, and a lot of businesses were not able to keep up. So I think the question that always comes up is like, how do you keep up with the change? And the simple answer is you got to innovate. And again, it's not as simple as it sounds. When innovation happens, like how do you make innovation very deliberate and very intentional? And I think the way to do it is get the best talent and get the most diverse talent. And when I say diverse talent, is not just because of race, color, whatnot. And I think this is where people get caught up in, well, diversity has to be X, Y, Z. What I mean by diversity is the diversity of thinking, diversity of different backgrounds, diversity of crazy ideas, totally different perspective. Bringing those things, I mean, look at every startup that has become a very successful business. All were thought of crazy ideas. From Uber to Airbnb, who would have thought that we will be, you know, putting people in our own houses, right? Why would someone get into someone's car? Like everything was a crazy idea. All that comes from diverse background, diverse thinking, crazy ideas, you name it. And all is, if you summarize everything, the theme would be that the diversity of thinking is what makes it so special. And that's how innovation happened. So for us, from an RTS perspective, this is what we are doing. And we are very, very focused on getting the best talent. And they don't have to work in IT. I mean, we have hired people from, you know, who have been chefs in the past, who have been, you know, landscapers in the past. They were passionate about IT and technology, and we got them. And they are probably the most successful employee that we ever had. So yeah, I mean, thinking is a crazy thing, but you know, it works.
Well, you know, and it only makes sense because those people have different patterns, different exposure. So they're bringing a whole different way of thinking to what could become a very routine process. And so it's disruptive, but in a positive way. So that's a great perspective. Kipton,
I think it ties a little bit back to some of your earlier comments about just taking that breath, taking that moment, asking somebody how they're feeling. So it's taking that moment to look at what you have designed or what you've thought about. And are you thinking about it if this was your background? Or what if you felt this way? That would make you uncomfortable. We've been having lots of conversations with students in our university work as well. And, you know, they're kind of the next workforce, and they feel so strongly about this and so strongly about getting equal opportunities and having everybody feel welcome, that it's only going to kind of intensify. But taking that second, let's think about this. Let's really think about what is that perception? How would this make somebody else feel?
Absolutely.
That's a great point. Kipton, as someone who's dealing really daily with recruiting new talent, so you are juggling not only, you know, creating a best-in-class culture for the current employees Phlow has, but you're also recruiting and bringing new prospects in. How do you manage that? How do you create that bond and that experience when we're all in different places and not able to physically be together as easily as before?
That's a great question. And I think it goes back to that consideration and getting to know each other and taking the time to understand where people are coming from and learning more about each other. I love the Project Aristotle that Google did, talking about psychological safety and how just having a simple check-in at the beginning of the meeting creates a psychologically safe environment to increase team performance. You know, I think the recruiting and getting to know each other is so important. And I think that we have a culture at Phlow of being open and authentic, being open to, you know, ask us anything, ask any question. And I had one candidate who asked the question. He said, you know, I've seen your marketing material. I've seen, you know, we've had these conversations. After I'm working there 90 days, what isn't in your literature? What haven't we talked about? What will I find out about Phlow? And I said, you know, we really care about each other, which I think, I don't know how common that is nowadays, but we all really care about our personal and professional development. And I think that goes back to our shared value of servant leadership and lifelong learning. I think those are our two differentiating qualities. And then also how much we really, we're a family first organization, meaning that if a candidate was on the fence or had questions, you know, our CEO gives out his phone number and says, please let's have a family conversation. Let's have your spouse call. And we're constantly kind of keeping the pulse and taking surveys to make sure, is this Monday, Friday remote, Tuesday, Thursday in the workplace? Is this working for you? How is that impacting your family? And we have had, you know, the results are over the top positive on how we're designing how we're working together and how it's benefiting our employees' families, and also finding ways to, excuse me, connect with our family, because this is a team effort. You know, a lot of us are working really long hours. For the two income earning households with small children, I can't imagine what that's like in a pandemic. And so it takes a team effort. We want to honor families and we care about each other.
Yeah. Thanks, Kipton. So now let's kind of turn to the last part of the conversation and talk about your office space and workspace. And I'll say some of the questions that are coming in definitely are in this camp. And I think there's curiosity around, are there amenities or spaces in your office that you plan to adapt? Are you not going to allow use of some of these? So we'll get to that. But Julia, first I'd like to give you some time, you know, just for context. Julia's team was in the midst of construction of a massive project. Correct me if I'm wrong, 250,000 square feet of existing renovation, and then a sister new expansion building that was 140,000 square feet.
Somewhere around that.
Plus or minus. So, you know, significant project that had been designed, was in the midst of construction when the pandemic happened. So what first, mentally as a planner and someone that's dealing with space, you know, share with us what that was like, and what sort of assessment or, you know, evaluation was done on this space, and did you did you have to modify the space, or did you find that your workplace strategy held and you were able to move forward with the original plan?
Well, luckily, I think two of the key success criteria that benefited us the most were choice and flexibility. So we came from a building where you had your assigned cube or your assigned office, and everybody clamored for the conference rooms that were available, booked them out perpetually, and it was sort of everyone fighting for space. So we knew we had to fix that. So choice of space was key. And so what we built was, okay, you have an assigned cube or you have an assigned office, but you have 2 or 3 huddle rooms in your team area. You have 1 or 2 assigned conference rooms that are just for your team. So you don't have to go out into the big bad world and fight other departments to get the time slot you want. There are collaborative areas dotted in between the workstations, and everything was done on a module, so it was very flexible. So flexibility was also key, because our business changes a lot, and we don't want to be on sort of the tail end of change. We want to know it's coming, anticipate it, and kind of be ready. So flexibility was key. So we also built other areas, like we call them floor commons, but it's sort of the point of arrival. It's where you find the coffee. It's where the stairs or elevator are. But we put a lot of different groupings of furniture and spaces. So there might be some booths with a little lid on them. There might be benches under the stairs. There might just be tables. But we basically have given everybody permission. You can work wherever you choose. Go in a booth, go in a huddle room. So when people do come back, I think what we'll really encourage is, first of all, go to your assigned space, have a look around. Does it feel a bit busy? Do you feel like people are uncomfortably close? And we're probably beyond the 6-foot rule. And then you have the freedom, pick your laptop up and go somewhere else. Go somewhere that there's no one in. At the moment, it's 1 person to a conference room, regardless of size. So choice and flexibility, I think, are going to be those things that really pay dividends for us.
Mm-hmm.
On the furniture side, I don't think we're going to change anything, because we won't bring 100% people back until we feel it's safe to do so. And I think if we just stick to incredibly spaced out spots, I think we'll be all right. But the furniture we did use, we didn't go for benching. We really didn't feel like highly open. No panels was the solution for us. So all of our cubes have panel walls. We've got a storage tower that pulls open, so it feels like a really solid barrier. We also have sit stands with a screen, so kind of an acoustic screen. So you have another barrier behind your monitors when you stand up. So I think all of those will probably serve us well.
Mm-hmm. And it as I'm listening to you, it sounds like the really important, you said flexibility and choice, but what I'm hearing is also there's an airiness, there's space. Things are not so tightly planned and congested that there's room to breathe and move and circulate. And I think that's important. There are ways, for those of you on this call, there are ways to modify your furniture. If you are in open benching, there are ways to accommodate that and retrofit to create some separation and privacy. But I think, and Michelle, you can speak to this. I think we are in the design community, there's alignment around how space will change after this. And I think that the density is going to be a bit of a turnoff to many people. You're going to have to rethink corridor widths and the amount of open space around gathering areas. So Michelle, are you seeing more along those lines as well?
Yeah, I think because we don't really know, like the 6 foot is a guideline, but nothing is set in stone about this, that it's really about the perception of safety and your perception of space. So you can put up as many screens as you want, but if that person is still like super close to me, or I'm in a 6-pack of people, I'm still gonna feel a little anxious about it. And so what we're hearing the clients want, and I think what's important, is to try all the what ifs. So think through them, test them out, see what 7 feet looks like, see what 8 feet looks like, try only having 4 packs instead of 6 or 8. but it's important to just test them, put them on paper, and then do the employee feedback, because every business attracts a different kind of person, which means those people have different perceptions and feelings about space. So it's important as you look at your floor plan to not necessarily maybe take something that would work for the type of staff that are at Altria, but to think about your individuals. Back to Joyce's comment, you know, really focusing on your people in particular. So doing those surveys, showing them test layouts, which one would feel better to you, or let's do a mock-up, let's do a prototype, let's have these people move and kind of see how it feels. It's all about testing, because, you know, nobody really knows what it's going to be or what the next virus might be. So let's prototype, let's explore these options and those what ifs.
And, you know, we anticipate employers are going to think differently about space in the future. So not only is there the option to design and create the space that you work in at HQ, but, you know, are there considerations being made for the home office and outfitting employees with, you know, furniture, with technology? So I don't know if any of our panelists are starting to see that kind of creep into their fields yet, or their industries, but that's something that there's certainly a lot of discussion around.
I think when it's safe to come back, we'll probably see people coming to the office to collaborate and to do more of togetherness. And then a balance of the week would probably be individual heads down work at home. At least that's what I'm getting a sense of. I mean, we've had some employees who've said, hey, if it's now okay for me to not come in more than once or twice a week, I might move an hour away to live near aging parents. And I'm willing to make a longer commute only occasionally. And I think, you know, that we're all going to hear a lot of those kinds of requests, and hopefully the employers are going to say, yeah, absolutely, that flexibility is now the gift that's come out of this. Because it's
going to become very personal. So yeah, person situation, you know, as kids get back into school, I mean, even in our office, my kid's still at home and some other kids are back. So really providing that choice and that kind of personal situation, you're sort of addressing it, but as long as they're getting their work done and they have that trust you mentioned earlier, that's what's really kind of driving the success.
But the trick is, to an earlier point, I think new employees, that's really tough when you don't know your team, when you don't know your manager and you haven't proven yourself because you're new. That's where I think it's really tough, and we'll have to be careful to do things like you all are saying, to provide those opportunities to kind of network internally and build that trust, even in the most difficult of circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Kipton, are you, you know, as a company that's focused on health and wellness, and you are founded by a physician, so clearly I think your point of view is very kind of dialed into health, and which includes mental health. So what are, you know, what are some suggestions you would have, or perhaps things that Phlow is doing to take into account the state that your employees are probably in, and how to maybe help them through this time?
No, that's a great question. And we actually just had our second physician join us last week. And I, you know, worked in employee wellness for a few years at the University of Virginia as well. So it's always top of mind. I think that my favorite book on wellness is called Well-Being, and it's from the Gallup poll. And what they found was the most important relationship that you have basically in your life is that of with your supervisor. And so we really work to make sure that we have clear lines of communication, we have one-on-ones, we have, you know, even as a young organization, we have defined job roles and responsibilities and goals, but then it's taking that to the next level. And we have a really beautiful benefits package. We have 30 days of annual PTO, and people use it here. If people, they take vacations, they take days off, you know, we work really, really hard, and sometimes we hit a wall, and it's like, you know what? Take a couple of days off, and we do, and we encourage each other, and we support each other, and we say, how can we help you with your time off? You know, we really do view this as a team, but I think having that open and authentic line of communication with all of us, and, you know, creating that psychological safety to have a check-in and say, you know, well, how's it going with, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many iterations of school some of our families have gone through in the past few months, and it's checking in with them to make sure they have everything they need. And, you know, if they need to work from home on one of our, you know, in office days, it's having that flexibility. And people do like coming to the office. I think coming to the office has probably helped our mental health for our organization as well, because it's nice having that contact and regularity.
As a parent with school-age children, I can vouch for that. There is a certain kind of peace and quiet and access to technology and concentration that is here that you never fully appreciated before this. Well, the last question that I'd like to throw out, and I'll get Jyot, you to kick us off to this, but I'd like to hear each of you, your perspective to this. But when we come back, and we will, how do you anticipate using your office space perhaps differently than you did pre-pandemic?
I would say, I think about it every day. I don't think I have a perfect solution yet, but one thing that I'm looking at is something that personally I felt that office space is so important. It brings collaboration, creativity, and many other things. I am giving it a second thought, not in a negative way, but I'm also saying you can do and you can collaborate remotely as well. So in other words, now we'll have a talent that is, let's say in Charlottesville or Northern Virginia, right? We can hire talent outside Richmond, something that I wouldn't call it dead against, but I was all about Richmond, right? I'm opening up to that front. In the short term, we're thinking that we'll assign like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for one smaller group to come in the office, and then maybe Tuesdays and Thursday for some other group, right? And I think we're going to make it a lot of fun. Hey, if your names, because we have a lot of people with similar names, all the Matts and all the Andrews and all the Johns are going to come on Monday, right? So we're going to just create this, kind of element of fun into this. And for example, this Wednesday, we are inviting all the Matts and the Johns and the Chris's to come in. And believe it or not, we have 10 of those in duplicate names. And it's just fun. And people are coming in. I think it's personal. So, but I think, the number one thing that I always think about, which kind of scares me or concerns me, is making sure that we're keeping them safe and making them feel safe and secure when we bring them to workplace. And, the last thing I want is like one person comes in and gets a case of COVID and we didn't know, and a bad thing happens. And then it's not, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive myself for that. But that we've got to be very careful on that part.
Well, and something we've talked about, the opposite of a point you just made. You said, now this is, as an employer, it's opened your eyes to look outside the Richmond region for hiring talent. The reverse is happening. People in other territories are trying to hire and poach Richmond talent, because now it's conceivable that you could work for a firm in Seattle or someone in England, or, with remote working being so adopted as the norm now. So I think as an employer, it presents, raises the bar on continuing to hold tight your culture and, have rituals, have things that make your people feel a part of something they belong to versus free agents, because that could certainly have some ripple effect in retention.
Yeah, and it's a challenge, and especially in a high-tech field that we're in, it's a nonstop challenge, and we have to be always 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and it's not easy. I don't have a magic solution, but one thing that we're doing really well is keeping it simple, having one-on-ones. I think Kipton talked about. I mean, these one-on-ones are magic, like they work like magic. They getting to know their family, and sometimes showing that you're also dealing with the same situation that they're dealing with, right? Because I say, hey, my daughter is shouting in upstairs, right? When I see that, and it's like, oh yeah, he understands where what we're feeling. And I think when you're able to relate your stress or your concern, or sometimes your happiness of just spending time with your family, I think it resonates with them. So yes, are we challenged by a company from West Coast and Seattle? Sure, right? And are people leaving to those companies? Sure they are, right? But what we're doing is this is also forcing us to up our bar to show them who we are and give them even better opportunity, right? And not get stagnant with the same way of doing things, which is not good. Something that I've been preaching to our clients, like, hey, we got to innovate, we got to come up with new ideas, we got to be creative, right? And if you're not following that, that's double standard. So I think we got to be very intentional about it.
Kipton, how would you answer that question for Phlow?
Will you ask it one more time? I was so into Jyot's answer. I'm so grateful to be on this panel.
When everyone fully returns to work, how do you imagine using office space differently? Especially with being a physician-owned company, you probably have a different lens on how you look at workspace, but how do you imagine things will change from the long term?
Well, we're in the middle of designing our office right now, and it looks different. So we're ordering larger cubes and really keeping in mind how many people can we safely accommodate? Hopefully, knock on wood, this is the last pandemic, of our lifetime, but what if it's not? And making sure that we have space that would accommodate anything that would happen. And, I think we're really excited about outfitting our outside terrace. We've been so lucky to have that great outdoor weather. So we've been able to have team lunches outside, but I think space looks different. And I think what you brought up earlier, it's paying attention to the home offices as well. We have let our team know, ask them what they need to optimize their home office. I think those home offices will start to look different. And in the office, it's, I am having a hard time in my head getting to, when will this actually end and what does it look like? And are we going to be freaked out forever and carrying hand sanitizer or mask with us for the next, I just am trying to live in our reality now. And
very, very fair.
Yeah.
Fair and I think probably felt by many perspective. Julia, how about for you and Altria?
Well, I think we'll pursue that flexibility I mentioned earlier. I don't know if it's approved yet. We're in the middle of a study to basically say, hey, if you want to be here more often than not, you'll have an assigned space. Mm-hmm. But maybe if you really only want to come in once or twice a week, or maybe you come in 2 days, from after the kids get on the bus and before they need to be picked up, maybe you won't get your own space that sits empty when you're not here. Mm-hmm. Maybe be zones for teams to share that are in, with their people. So I'm kind of envisioning a world where we have some assigned and some flex space. And I think there's going to be a lot more coming and going, a lot less of 9 to 5. So I think there'll be a lot of motion here. I hope there'll be a nice energy in the building where people are using all of the different choices of spaces, and hopefully they'll match, a need or a function with the space they choose. That's ultimately what we designed and we hoped. And I think there's even greater potential now, because I think more people will say, all right, I'm going to save this task for home because I can do it well there. But where I need the whiteboard, where I need the content sharing monitor, or I need a big enough room that we can all brainstorm, I'm going to do those tasks on site. So I have a feeling it's going to go that way. We'll wait and see.
Michelle, any last comments?
I'm just excited that it's all going to be cleaner. We've all picked up some good habits. Even though nobody sits at my desk when I'm not here, I wipe it down when I come in. You just start to build those habits that I think are important and are going to stay. I think the hand sanitizer after the playground is going to stay, and it should. So I think we're all going to pick up some new patterns that are for the good.
Well, we hope you guys have learned something and enjoyed hearing this chat. I feel like I've learned a lot just as an audience and spectator. So thank you. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Jyot. Thank you, Kipton and Michelle for chatting with us. There will be a link after this that you can post to the video, and also contact information for our panelists. So I encourage you, if you have specific questions about their businesses or any comments or questions, please feel free to reach out. And we hope to see you guys at our next webinar coming soon. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.